Welcome to the Diary of a Muse podcast. I'm Tess Day, and I'm absolutely thrilled to have you here with me, embarking on this journey of discovery and transformation. Well, Jeff, it is absolutely lovely to have you here with us today. Very excited to speak to you. Our listeners are probably chomping at the bit to hear your quotation that you have to share with us today. So let's start right off there before we even introduce you and tell them all about you.
All right. We'll say we must all suffer one of two things: the pain of discipline, the pain of regret or disappointment.
Oh, wow. I think that is a beautiful way to begin this conversation today. We had a conversation a little while ago. I found out some really interesting things about you. I've read your bio. Really interesting start to life. Very different to the life you've led and where you find yourself now doing what you're doing. So, do you want to just give us a little insight into the early days in Iowa and what then sparked that journey into, shall I let everybody know, radio? And then, last but not least, a life of being a personal trainer for a very special select group of people. So,
Yes, a
fire
lot of
away.
people are interested in that journey. They're like, how did you go from where you were to where you are now? So you mentioned Iowa. So I grew up on a farm in the Midwest of the United States, a small farm near a big city, but outside of town. We lived in town until I was about 9, and then my parents moved to the farm. So all of a sudden, there were no kids next door like there was when I lived in the city. Classmates, people in my same grade or so lived at a few houses away or a block or two away. So we were always hanging out after school or on the weekends and playing baseball and doing whatever. All of a sudden, I'm on the farm. The nearest boy my age was like 3/4 of a mile away, and he didn't even go to the same school as I did, so I didn't know him that well. My best friend from the school I went to was like a mile away. Of course, we were both on farms and had farm chores to do and things like that, so we got together rarely. So most day, and I had 3 younger sisters, no brothers.
Oh, wow.
So I was kind of stranded, so to speak. So, I read a lot when I was growing up, a lot of books. Now I listen to audiobooks while I'm exercising and running and stuff. So I don't
Mm.
read as much as I did because I had a lot of spare time and time to myself. And I fell in love with listening to the radio because I could get the radio, and that was a constant companion. And when I was doing chores or, doing stuff, I always had the transistor radio on back in those days in the 1970s. Really fell in love with it, just listening to not only the music, but then got fascinated by radio, the DJs and stuff, the presenters, talking in between. And I always was a good speaker and a good reader and could read aloud when I was in the Catholic school. Whenever there was a speech contest, the nuns would tell me that I was going to be in the speech contest. So I did, a lot of speaking from a young age. And my dad was big into radio and into speaking. So he told me, if you can make a living talking, it's way better than making a living, breaking your back doing manual labor or something like that. So my parents totally encouraged that. And I'm like, I could make a living being on the radio playing records. Oh my God. So, that was all I wanted to do. So I was on my first 2 radio stations when I was still in high school. So I had just really pushed my senior year in high school. I started at a little tiny station. By the time I graduated high school, I had making tapes of myself and parlayed that into a job at the biggest station in town, even before I went to college. And then, of course, I went to radio broadcasting. I think it was just mass communications at that time, and was on the campus radio station and worked at commercial station in town part-time, on the weekends, and just kind of did that. And then graduated from college, moved from Iowa to California to Los Angeles, where huge radio market. And if you want to be anyone in entertainment in the United States, you go to Los Angeles pretty much, or New York. Weather much better in Los Angeles than New York. So that's where I wound
Absolutely.
up there. And the beaches are a lot better. So I did that for, so around 2000, the year I turned 40, because I'd been in radio. It's not a healthy lifestyle like being a rock and roll DJ, top 40 DJ. So I would be, sitting at a microphone like this right here, sometimes working really early morning. So I had weird hours. So I ate badly and, didn't do really any health stuff. So I was getting overweight. I was about 30 pounds overweight by the time I turned 40. And through my wife's radio station, because she's also in radio, and that's how I met her, they were offering 2-for-1 gym memberships for like the new year, for the first of the year when everybody makes their resolutions to,
Yeah.
get in shape. And she's like, you kind of talked about needing to get in shape. Should we do it? And I said, sure. So we went into the gym and we signed up. And then the turning point was the guy that from the gym said, do you know anything about exercise and training and how to use the machines and stuff? And I said, no, not really. And he said, well, you'll just kind of copy what other people do. You'll see them do something, so you'll do something. You don't have a plan. You won't really see any results, and you'll stop coming after 3 months or something like that. So we really suggest you hire a personal trainer.
Good
And I said,
sales
makes
pitch.
sense. They didn't push for a big package and try to,
No.
get a ton of money out of me, but they said even just do like a 5 pack of sessions just so you kind of know what you're doing. And turns out, so we said, sure. So our appointment was for the next day or two. We show up for the personal trainer, never met him, didn't know who he was. Turns out he was also from Iowa. He also went to the University of Iowa, graduated just like me, but he had played in the National Football League. He was a professional football player that had just gotten out of the league and was going into personal training. But since we had all this common background, we hit it off really well. The other big important thing was I really liked personal training because just
Mhm.
being able to challenge yourself, it's like, oh, can I do a little bit more today? And seeing myself get stronger, losing the weight. I was really happy. Everybody was like going, wow, you're looking great. I'm like, yeah, I'm working out. I'm watching my diet. I've got a trainer, all of this stuff. So I did that for a few years and things were going great. And then the trainer moved a little ways away, not horribly far, but I stopped going, seeing him, thought, oh, I'll just do this on my own. I know what's going on. But I didn't have the accountability. So I would go to the gym less and less, started eating worse and worse again, ended up gaining all the weight back and even a little more. I'm like 40 pounds overweight. This is like 10 or more years later. And so now I'm in my early 50s. So, of course, your metabolism slows down and your body's changing. I'm like, uh-oh. I got really mad at myself. I saw some pictures of myself and I'm like, I got to get back in shape. It was so good earlier and I let it all get away. So I called up that trainer again, started driving to see him, started working out, got my buddy to do it with me because he heard me, raving about all of this. So I got back in shape. And this time while I'm training with Austin is his name, I'm like, I need to become a trainer too, because I like the stuff he was telling me about, like what was going on, why we were doing the exercises and the muscles we were working as well. So I was kind of fascinated by the whole physiological as opposed to just seeing how much weight I could lift. And he even commented on that. He's like, you're kind of learning this stuff pretty well. And I'm like, I need to get certified myself so I can control my own weight and diet and strength, and then maybe pass that on to others. And since I was already in my mid 50s, I thought, you know what? These young kids don't want to work out with me in their 20s and 30s. People my age or older will listen to me. I know what they're going through. So I specialize now in training seniors, specifically women in their 60s and 70s and 80s. And that's where we are. So, I was still I just started training part time from like 2015. And then when COVID hit, I lost my last radio job. The internet's really taking its toll on radio. Radio is kind of in decline because of the internet. So I just switched when I'd lost that last job and just went to training full time, like 40-year history.
I mean, there's so many things I absolutely love about what you've just told us. One of the things you also I read when I was, reading up about you was, that strong work ethic that you really realized you had from those days on the farm. That ability to follow routine, get up early, work hard, maybe break your back a little bit, and all those things. But it's those foundational things that you sort of never lose as you move forward in life. But the other thing that was fascinating, and I'm fascinated with books as well. reading helps us grow our imagination. So even though perhaps your scenery and your view was the same every day, it was the ability to escape to other places through the books you read that helped you build a picture of the kind of life you wanted to have. Even though you probably didn't know exactly how that was going to unfold, it certainly didn't limit your ability to say, well, I'm just here and this is just my life. And then, of course, the love of radio and music, because you do like Foo Fighters. Did I get that right?
The Foo Fighters. So last month, well, in August, yes, I saw there are three concerts in Southern California, two in Los Angeles and the one in San Diego. Now live in San Diego. Most of my
Yeah.
life, I've
Mm,
been in
mm,
Los Angeles. So I went to those three. Alternative rock. They call it dad rock now. Green Day. I saw them in Los Angeles 2 weeks ago, seen them this week here in San Diego, the show there. So I still go to a ton of concerts, still love music. I've
mm.
probably been to 8 concerts this year, still. So I go to a lot of live shows because I love that. So that's always going to be a part of me. But
Yeah.
and that's, I guess, still kind of the long hair. I'm still kind of live one foot in that rock and roll DJ lifestyle. I
Yeah.
can't give
Yeah.
that up and go pure corporate or whatever. But yes, that really, as a kid on the farm, sparked my imagination. I was reading about, a lot of the classics. And so I was like transported all over the world, even from my bedroom, reading at night before I would go to bed.
Mm,
Always knew that was going to get out of Iowa and go to some place that was happening and exciting.
mm,
Nothing against Iowa, but that just wasn't anything there to hold me back. My parents still live there. My two living sisters still live there. I'm like going, no. I go back once or twice a year, and I was just back from my 45th high school reunion, and great to see everybody. And it's part of my past and a very important part of my formation, of who I
mm,
am now.
mm.
But it's like there's a lot more out there that, I just have to be a part of
An
and see
explorer.
and live.
And I guess, what's also interesting is the fact that you've stepped into that world of personal training, health and well-being, looking after yourself. It's probably the one magical ingredient that has allowed you to have the opportunity to be well enough, fit enough, and able enough to attend concerts like the Foo Fighters, which perhaps if you hadn't, and you maybe were still overweight and weren't as sort of energized as you absolutely come across on this chat, you wouldn't have been able to have the energy to be able to go out and enjoy those things. So it's amazing how the choices we make really do impact the way our life plays out. And I think that is fundamentally what you are doing with your more mature clients. You're helping them have the best possible life experience that they can because they're looking after their bodies. So what
Certainly.
really drives you to work with the sort of more mature person? I fall into that category these days. So and I resonate with a lot of things you say. Our bodies change over 50. What used to be so effortless now isn't necessarily so easy. We know in the back of our minds that we have to look after ourselves. We have to be active. We have to do strength training for bone density, all the things you and I have spoken about. It's one thing to know it, it's a whole different thing to actually have the confidence or even the know-how of where to go and how to even start that if we haven't done it for a while. Talk us through maybe some examples and how you even encourage older people to get involved in that more physical side of looking after our bodies.
So you touched on some great points. One of the basics is, the bodies change as we age. Cells are always constantly dying off, but when we're young, they replace themselves really quickly. And that's why younger people grow and get bigger. And then why older people usually tend to get skinnier and start shrinking again, is those cells aren't replaced. That includes the nervous system, the muscles. So you touched on, bone density, so osteoporosis, especially with women postmenopausal.
Yeah.
And the other huge one, and maybe even bigger, especially for men, it's called sarcopenia. It's age-related muscle loss. So when people become frail, it's usually loss of muscle mass. And it's an exponential loss in strength compared to the mass. So losing a little bit of mass makes an even bigger loss in strength. And you see older people, their arms and legs are this, big around, especially, ladies, once they're getting late 70s or 80s. Maybe they have a tummy because of their diet, but their arms and legs become really skinny. That is linked to all cause mortality. People with that sarcopenia die quicker. You become a fall hazard because you don't have the strength in your legs and your core to stay upright, to correct your balance if something happens, if you trip, if somebody bumps into you, things like that. So you mentioned strength training, so that's really a key there then. So my mom was in her mid late 70s and I'm trying to get her to train on Zoom, because I'm out here and she's in Iowa. She's like, well, I don't want to get too big and muscular, and I'm like, Mom, that's not going to happen. But if you start getting your muscles start getting too big, we'll just stop the training or cut back. Okay. Just smiling, knowing that isn't going to be the problem. Either slow the loss of muscle mass or maybe even reverse it and actually start building muscle mass again is huge. And the beautiful thing is the exact same things we do to counter the muscle loss helps the bone loss as well. So we can fight the osteoporosis and the muscle loss, the sarcopenia at the exact same time by strength training. And it doesn't have to be lifting big heavy weights. You can be using some bands and tubes, body weight exercises. We'll do push-ups, but we'll do them off of like a high bar. So you're only, it's not like you're on the floor trying to grind them out. Where you can do them against a wall and just do a little bit at a time so we can adapt things to
Mm.
suit where you are physically. So that's a huge thing. So, and also I mentioned the nervous system. When we start doing things like that, the nervous system kind of revs up again, where if we just kind of sit in the chair, walk a little bit, walk around the block a couple of times, oh, I'm getting my exercise. I walk around the block twice a day. It's like that certainly isn't enough. We're not challenging the nervous system. That's what keeps everything functioning really well. If you trip, your reflexes are faster. So it's safer. Balance is a huge thing. So osteoporosis, the sarcopenia, and poor balance are the three things that most of the ladies I work with all suffer from. Now they have other goals. We do try to get them, stronger or, maybe some weight loss, but getting their legs strong is the number one thing because if a fall can be just devastating,
Oh,
injury,
I've
broken
seen.
hip, have to move out of your home into a care facility, all of that. So that usually the number one thing, top priority is get them more stable on their feet. And then we start working on building muscle, cognitive. I do cognitive training too. So it's physical exercises with mental exercises at the same time, word lists and word games, math problems, all different types of things like that, reflex things to rev up the nervous system, also helping strengthen the brain. Loss of muscle mass is associated with dementia as well, low heart rate because getting blood and nutrients, oxygen to the brain, keeping that flowing keeps helps fight dementia. So when you're just sedentary and you're losing muscle mass, you're at a bigger risk of dementias as well, including Alzheimer's and Parkinson's.
Yeah, that takes me
So
back to that saying, if you don't use it, you lose it, you know.
that's right. That is certainly right.
Do you want to just remind us of your quotation again?
Of,
Because I
of my
think,
quotation, yes,
yes,
it's
just read it out
we
again
must
because it's relevant, I think, right at this point.
that is certainly is. We must all suffer one of two things: the pain of discipline or the pain of regret or disappointment. And that's
Yeah.
from business philosopher Jim Rohn.
Oh, okay.
Rohn. I've loved Jim Rohn since I had an audio cassette of him speaking in college. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it really opened up my mind to the possibilities of what I should do to make something of my life.
Yes, he's definitely one of the fathers, I would say, of coaching.
Yes,
Highly inspirational. And yes, there is a price to pay and there's a win on either side. But, if we don't sit up and pay attention, or we don't ask questions about where we're at along our life journey, we are going to have regrets. Foresight, thinking ahead, watching others, looking and identifying people. Why is so and so so active and so out there? And how come they get to do all these amazing things? Sometimes identifying somebody, how do you do that? Oh, I go and work out with Jeff, or I'm active. I'm an active person, and I would imagine you bring a lot of confidence to people to actually continue to be out there interacting. Yes, it's our health and well-being, but it's our connection with others as well that must play a huge part, especially as we get older and feel less essential.
Certainly. And that's a great tie-in to like balance
Mm,
because millions of people, older people, they feel unstable on their feet. They're afraid of falling, so they don't go out and do things. Well, unfortunately, that starts a downward spiral because then sitting at home afraid to go out means you're only going to get weaker and weaker and become a bigger fall hazard. And then, of course, that leads to loneliness and isolation and depression. All of those things, the lack of socialization, all related to mental health as well. Higher rates of dementia among people with depression and isolation, lack of social contact. Really, that strength and balance training, and of course the cognitive training helps the body and the mind both. They're tied in completely.
yeah, really interesting. 'Cause you've been doing some further study on mind, haven't you, and cognitive work alongside the personal training, which I think you've probably sort of mastered more over the last sort of couple of years. Or how long have you been doing it now? So you said at 55 you qualified
So
as
I
a
got
trainer.
trained in 2015,
Yeah,
certified.
certified. Yeah.
And so I've been a trainer for 9 years. One of my first certificates, besides my regular personal training certification, was a specialty certification in senior fitness. So just like, nurses or doctors, they have to keep taking classes to keep their skills up and to be up
Mm,
to date on the latest things. So like the first continuing education credit that I ever got was to be a senior fitness specialist. And then I have several others, pain free, sort of, mobility. I do have group exercise instructor, weight management certification as well. So I can coach people on weight loss. It's not the number one thing I do because there's a lot of emotional component with weight loss. Real quickly on that, people can go home after a workout and eat more calories than we burned in the training session. I don't
mm,
have control of them over those other 166 hours a week. I only have 2 hours a week. However, with the strength and balance training, we work hard those two 1 hour sessions, perhaps, no matter if they sit on the sofa the rest of the week, they're still going to be stronger. The
yeah.
strength works that way and the balance. It helps, obviously, if they're doing things on their own, but they can't counteract the work we've done even by sitting there. I mean, we've got those muscles stronger.
Do
So
you
I
find,
don't specialize in the weight loss, but
yeah.
you know,
But do you find when somebody starts coming to your classes, they tend to, even if they are on the sofa, they tend to spend less time on the sofa over time purely because they feel better and they're stronger, their balance is less of an issue. So it changes their lifestyle.
they have more energy, so they want to do more things. They feel like they can do more things. And on the diet, they start eating better because all of a sudden, health and fitness is a much bigger part of their life because
Yeah.
they are there and they're seeing other people and we're talking about it. They usually all start eating better as well because they're like, I know how hard I'm working in the gym. I don't want to come home and blow it by eating stuff that's bad for me. We talk about you cut out half of the bad stuff of the bad food. We're not even asking you to go on like this vegetable and chicken breast diet. No one wants to do that. I don't want to do that. But can we cut out half of the bad stuff and add in a little more, replace it with a little more of the good stuff? And people are like, okay, I can do that,
Yeah, I'm
and
up for
they
that.
start seeing
Yeah.
results. And then with the exercise on top of it, it makes the weight loss easier, of course, as well, as opposed to just, if you're just sitting around cutting a few calories or trying to eat better isn't going to have nearly the effect. And of course, as we see progress, that motivates us to do even more or at least to continue.
So why are you so passionate about this? Because you're so passionate. Your energy just shines through. So what is it that drives you in this? Is it really an underlying factor that you know that as you help these clients of yours, it's keeping you fully embraced, and so it's benefiting you. What drives you?
That is a big part of it. You know, I've seen with my own family, my mom and my sisters are overweight. There's so much more they could do. I see people hobble down the sidewalk, down the street when I'm passing them. You could make your life so much better, so much easier. You'd be so much happier if you just put in the effort. I mean, I don't run up. I'm half tempted to come up and say, "We can do, you don't have to be like this,
Yeah.
you know. We can do something." But of course, that would not be right, and it's their decision. But trying to reach people and spread the word, and if someone says, yes, I do want to change and I don't like my current situation and I want to do something about it, I would love to do that. And getting the feedback from people that tell me I have literally changed their life. And even after a short period of time, they now see the light and they go, oh, wow, you know, they didn't know what they didn't know. And now I've shown them, like, you know, we can make things a lot better. You'll be happier. People, you know, you'll be self-confident, not only on your feet, but when you look in the mirror, you'll have a better self-image. So that boosts your, you know, your mental, you know, condition. You're much
Mm,
happier about yourself. And the fact that I'm actually training people and moving with them, it does keep me a lot stronger. I have a trainer in the gym just like 2 weeks ago, and I told him I'm going to be 64 next month. He's like, oh my God, I would have never guessed that. He goes, and I hope I have even some of the energy that you have when I'm that age, because I'm twice as old as he is. And he's like, I can't even imagine having that much energy at your age. So, you know, I do drink a lot of coffee, I'll admit, but it keeps me going.
cheers.
Yeah. Okay. I've got my cold brew coffee in
Mm,
here right here. But you know, I get up around 5 a.m. I already ran about 3 miles this morning with our dogs before our interview, which started at 8 o'clock California time in the morning. So I get up and hit it early. I do go to bed early just because I'm tired by the end of the day. But yeah, it definitely keeps me strong too. And people are seeing me and they're like, oh my God, you're in great shape. And I go, well, it's a benefit of my job. It's a side, you know, it's a side benefit of my job working with other people. And, you know, so I feel like I'm doing good for them and it's doing good for me just as a byproduct. So that's
and you're a good walking example. You lead by example.
Yes, exactly. Oh,
Yeah,
I do. In
yeah,
fact, they see that. And, you know, a selling point is the fact that I'm almost 64, and they're like, oh my God, I would have thought you were in your late 40s or maybe 50 or something like that. And I'm like, we can impart a little bit of like of that on you. You know, come join me. We can look younger than we really are and feel younger than we really are. Let's do what I've been doing and try to make that happen for you as well. So I think it is, you know, I see trainers, and not to judge, you know, because you don't know their health problems
no,
and all of
yeah,
that. But
yeah,
I see trainers that are considerably overweight. And I'm like, you're not being a good role model. I don't tell them that, but I'm
no,
thinking, I go, that's not a good role model for your clients to lose weight if they see you, you know. And like I say, I really, that's a big thing, is try not to judge. Somebody really heavy comes into the gym, awesome for them. They
yeah,
realize they've gotten to a bad place for whatever reason, emotional, maybe they've had physical problems. You don't know what their background is. They may have some serious things that caused them to gain weight. Maybe they were on life-saving medication that
mm,
caused them to gain weight. So I really go out of my way not to judge, but I'm like, if they're there trying to help themselves, great. You know, sometimes you see looks from young buff
mm,
people going like, oh, what are they doing here? I'm like, they need to be here more than you need to be here. So, you know, don't give me any of that. I mean, they don't tell me that, but you see the looks, you
yeah.
know, and it's like, no, they're here trying to get better. God bless them. You know, I'm
Yeah,
totally supporting them.
I agree. I think when we're younger, I mean, because we've all walked our own journey, but as a younger person with less life experience, you only know what you know, right? So when you look at somebody across the way who's perhaps a bit older, and you go, "Gosh," because you're looking and basing it on your experience. You don't know, like you said, what they've been through. So yeah, we are quick to judge, but as we get older and we get a little wiser, we would hope to imagine that we're all just a little bit more compassionate and less critical of individuals because life does happen. You know, people have accidents, and that can really set back somebody's ability to be physically active as well. You must obviously come across people who have had a variety of things happen to them through their life, and now they're in front of you. How do they come to you? Do they just call you up? Do you meet them at certain places? Do people refer clients to you? What makes a more mature person come out and say, I'd like to work with you?
So that's kind of the battle is reaching people,
Yeah.
not just to for me to get clients, but for the people out there, they don't know. I just had a lady, she started with me about a month ago. I had met her doctor. Someone introduced me to her doctor because they were talking about this book called Outlive by Dr. Peter Attia. It's been a New York Times bestseller. It came out like a year ago, year and a half ago. And it talks about all the things you can do to not only extend your lifespan, but what's called health span. How long are you going to be healthy? You can live to be 85, but if those last 10 years are in a hospital bed on a respirator, that's not health span, that's lifespan, but we want to extend the quality of life that as long as we can as well. So he really talks about that. And they were talking, and I had recommended the book to my friend, and he was talking to his friend who's a doctor, and she was reading the same book. And she's like, you have to meet my friend who's a trainer because he talks and lives this stuff and does this stuff with clients all the time. So she's now started referring some of her clients to me. And the lady that I just started with about a month ago, she's like, I had no idea there was like a personal trainer for seniors. This is
Mm,
awesome.
mm,
She's already seeing progress. She's giving me glowing reviews and things just because she had no idea this world existed that could really help her. She's had heart failure. She's had, serious, she now has diabetes, or doctors like, you need to work with Jeff. And
mm,
she's,
mm,
sold. So I've had people refer there. That's a lot of it. I'm in, I do networking with doctors and other people who get the word out. I try to spread the word by speaking to groups as much as I can. A lot of people just don't know that type of service exists out there. So really trying to break through the clutter of fitness where most people think it's for 20 and 30-year-olds, who just want to get really big and buff looking and not realize that. So it is a challenge. And that's kind of the thing is, posting on Facebook, then other social medias, videos of me working with clients and just doing simple stepping exercises to improve their footwork, simple strength exercises, saying, we don't have to make it like some military, boot camp training. We can do it age appropriate. You're appropriate to where you are physically now, and then try to advance you, but not say, okay, we're going to hand you 40-pound weights and you have to do these bicep curls or whatever. I have 1 pound weights. And sometimes we're starting with 1 pound weight. Sometimes we're just doing their bare arms with no weights just to get the movement going and get the blood
mm,
flowing. And then when that gets easy, it's like, okay, now we've got 1 pound weights. Now we're going to do that when that gets so just a slow, steady progression. Sometimes it's like, oh, my shoulder's starting to hurt. Okay, we're going to back off of that and let that rest. So, I'm always like, is anything hurt? Your knee okay? Because, most older folks, their shoulders hurt, their knees hurt mainly. Sometimes their hip, of course, a lot of back pain. So I'm working around that with each
mm,
person.
mm,
It's like, is this, yeah, this is fine. Okay, we're going to do this. Oh, no, that kind of hurts. Okay, we're going to do. So that's a huge part of what I do. And other trainers notice that too. When we're in the gym, they're like, you're working around. Somebody comes in with braces on their legs that I actually work with,
mm,
So we have to do all kinds of different things. And people are looking, going, oh my gosh. But the stuff she's doing now compared to when she started coming in, it's amazing. So a big part of it is being appropriate and advancing people. A lot of older folks think they're going to get hurt because the weights are going to be too strong. So it's like we try to get as much improvement as we can while still doing it safely, taking it easy on your body, not doing anything that could be a fall risk. A lot of times they're doing balance exercise and they're doing it against a wall or a railing, and I'm behind them with my arms out like this to catch them in case they kind of lean backwards, So
Yeah,
I'm like a
yeah,
mother hen hovering over
yeah.
them just to keep them as safe as possible. Plus, they're always, do we need to be hanging on to something when we're doing this to start, And now we'll just hang on with one arm, but I'm going to be right here next to you to make sure if you kind of start to wobble that I've got you.
Yeah,
So
it's that
that's a big
trust
part of it.
factor, huge trust factor here as
Yeah,
well.
it is. And some of them are scared. They're like, I don't think I want to do that. So a lot of times I know they could do it, but they don't think they can do it or they're afraid. So we
Yeah.
hold off until they feel confident. Okay, I think I can let go now and we can do this without me holding on. Even though the bar's right there and I'm still right there. It's like if you start to feel it, you can grab on, but a lot of that is, yeah, for them to trust me.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things that were springing to mind as you were speaking there. One of them was, when we get a beautiful antique item and we want to restore it, we have to approach it completely differently to the way we would a big, strong oak table that is solid. You could be tougher with it or more harsh with it. Whereas with an antique, you've got to tread carefully. You don't want it to break. But when you've restored it, it can live on for so much longer and be enjoyed and appreciated by so many. So for a senior person who is stronger and more confident, they can go out, their family can get more from them. They have happier interactions and all those things. I was just seeing the other day Jane Fonda out on social media again. I mean, it blows my mind how fabulous she does look. I know with her financial backing, she's probably had a lot of extra things done to assist the way she looks. But it's not about how she looks, it's how she moves her body, her mind, her agility. I go back to days when I was 10 years old and my aunt was doing Jane Fonda workouts on the TV, you know, um, and there was Jane doing all these things. But I mean, that was 40, 45 years ago, and she is still strong, active, and so involved in her life. And if she's an example of the journey that we all go on, she's always stayed in touch with looking after her body because it's our temple, right? We only have one. I think it's amazing that you have this passion and this I don't know, this interest to care about a group of people that aren't doing it for the bikini on the beach in the summer, but really for quality of life and enjoyment. Because there's nothing worse than having an active mind, but your body just won't allow you to really experience what you could through your thoughts. And that often is as we get older, we've been behind desks or we've worked at desks for so long, we haven't been active. And now we don't have our desk anymore, but our body needs to hold itself up. So,
Certainly.
what advice would you give to someone who's listening who didn't know that you existed? How would they begin to almost mentally prepare themselves to reach out and say, Jeff, or someone else in another part of the world, perhaps who does something similar to you. How do I sign up? I'm in my 70s. I'm really not digital friendly, even though there are a lot of older people who are. My world comes from a very different place. How do I even begin to pave a pathway for myself to even do this kind of exercise thing?
Right. And I do train on Zoom and I do have people halfway around the world. I do, even though I'm in Southern California, I train someone in Europe,
Oh,
someone
wow.
in Malta on
Fantastic.
Zoom twice a
Mm-hmm.
week. But for people, closer to home, at least in the United States, we have like senior centers, senior community centers. They'll offer maybe chair yoga classes,
Mm-hmm.
which is a good low level for people to start out. So it's hard to fall out of the chair, so you can still lift your legs and do leg exercises, marching while sitting,
Mm-hmm.
and then arm things like that. And they do twisting and turning to strengthen the core and to help your balance, even though you're still sitting down. Tai Chi classes are great. They call it meditation in motion
Mm-hmm.
is Tai Chi.
Oh,
So it's
lovely.
like a very gentle yoga, slow movement. So, it's safe. And if you have creaky shoulders and things like that, you can always modify, but that's at least to get the blood flowing and to start getting some, working on your balance and getting mobility, the flexibility, lack of flexibility. Stiff ankles is one of the number one things that it makes you a fall risk if your ankles are stiff.
Mm.
So doing, pumping your foot, like sitting down, and even if you have your heel on the floor and just doing some of this and then maybe some ankle circles, things like that, because they're like your shock absorbers when you walk. And if you step on something uneven, and if you're going to go over if your ankle can't accommodate that, that. So that's a huge, and in the hips, but ankles are like number one in So just getting the muscles stretching, a little more limber. Then if you, God forbid, do fall, you're less likely to hurt yourself if you're a little more limber than if you're brittle and stiff. So like looking at senior centers, even there's, a yoga center near you, and they have very basic beginner yoga. And then you still don't have to follow along with what the teacher does. Sometimes they're even a little more enthusiastic, and it's like, okay, I can't do that. I'm just going to kind of sit here and hold this little bit of a pose instead of try to go into this full pose and stuff. Aqua aerobics are really good, stuff in the pool, your waist high, and the water adds resistance. And if it's a heated pool, it feels good on your muscles and joints. So those are some really good places to start. And even maybe that's people would be content to do that, having individual coaching or small group coaching where we're actually trying to progress you, see where you are, where you want to be, and then do the appropriate exercises and modifications of those exercises to get you a little stronger. That takes usually a little more personalized training as opposed to just a group class. They'll probably have you doing the same thing pretty much every week, but it's a great place to start. And for some people, that's enough. Or financially, some of those group classes are really inexpensive, like at a senior center, maybe a chair yoga is $5 or something like that.
Yeah.
And doing that a couple of times a week, you would see big improvements, way better than just sitting on your sofa. Folks can always reach out to me just for inspiration, and then there's some things
Yeah.
online. Of course, it's not specialized and you're not getting any feedback. If you're doing something wrong, no one will tell you and you don't know. So there's some injuries. A lot of people are like, well, there's tons of YouTube videos. I'll just watch somebody else. And yes, but you're not getting the safety and the critical feedback on proper technique, where you may not
Yeah.
realize you think you're doing it right, but people don't have great body awareness, especially when
No.
they start and their
Hmm.
back's hunched over and they don't realize they're not sitting upright and they're not holding their stomach in, to protect their lumbar spine by keeping a strong core, things like that. But certainly doing something's better than nothing, especially if it's not
Yeah.
real vigorous. That's when you can more likely to hurt yourself if you go from not doing anything to try to, like, I'm going to be in shape in 3 weeks. I'm going to work so hard, then you're just going to hurt yourself. So that's a big thing too. People get too enthusiastic and they want to see results immediately. They didn't get in poor shape overnight. You're not going to get back in shape and strong overnight either. Now, it
Yeah.
was probably a many year or maybe even multi-decade decline.
Yeah.
You have to expect it to take at least several months or even a year or two to make big changes. Everything is better if we can stop the decline and at least level it off and then slowly start to, go back up. Way better and usually safer for most. If you're young, if you're in your 20s or 30s or even 40s, it's different. But once you're in your 60s and 70s and 80s, we have to be a lot more careful on trying to change the trajectory of that, curve.
Yes, and how often do we forget that although our mind is young, our body is slightly different? And it is important that when people start out, especially like you were advised, if you go back to the beginning of your story, when you and your wife joined the gym and you were taken around, it was advised that you perhaps had 5 sessions in the beginning with somebody to help you start right. And so, why should that be any different at any stage of our lives when we're getting into it for the first time or getting reintroduced into it at a different stage of our life? I've actually met people who, in their youth, 19, 20, were big on the gym, lifting weights, doing all things. And then they're 45 and they say, okay, well, I've got to lose all this belly, all those business lunches or whatever. I'm going to go back to the gym. And they go back trying to pick up the same weights they did when they were 20 at their peak fitness. It's not the same experience. So I
And they're
think
going to
having
get hurt.
yeah, and they do get hurt, and getting hurt stops them from going back, and so they compound the issue because now it's even harder to return. But your energy, I would imagine, would be such a beautiful added advantage to getting fit because there's a lot of encouragement, and this is not difficult. It doesn't have to be hard. We're not looking for perfection. We're here to have fun but to make sure that life is good. And I think that is often a deciding factor when it comes to actually deciding if I'm going to have a personal trainer, regardless of my age. Who is that person on the other side? Do they really want to be here? Or are they just doing the job? And I feel that you genuinely want to make a difference for other people. And that
Thank
would
you.
sign me up straight away.
Okay, great. The trainers I admire that I see that are, some of the nationally known trainers are very up and energetic and enthusiastic and motivate people. The ones that are just kind of, okay, now we're going to do 10
Yeah,
sit-ups, we're going to
yeah,
do 10,
yeah.
and it's like they're not motivating anyone. So the ones I really admire, I always had this energy being on the radio, the program directors are always like, "Oh, I love your energy on the air. You don't sound like you're not putting people to sleep. You're like getting people energized, even
Yeah.
for the music. The music was energetic. I kind of matched my tempo to the music, since I like the rock and roll and stuff. It's like energetic music. I'm just an energetic person, and the trainers I see that are and with most clients, they really feed into that. Most of them are drawn to a more energetic trainer and enthusiastic because people love, and most people love that enthusiasm. The cynical ones, maybe not as much,
Yeah.
older guys, maybe less than older ladies. One reason I specialize in working with older ladies, they're usually much more pleasant to work with just because they're more open to things. If
Hmm.
you go to a yoga or a Zumba class or a Pilates class, it's 95% ladies and not guys. And part of it is going back to the point that you talked about, that oh yeah, they were an athlete in high school or college, and I get so much of that from guys. Well, I played football in high school, and I'm like, that was 60 years ago. You're
Yeah.
not there. We can't do that same. They're like, well, we used to do this, and I'm 60 years ago, dude. We're gonna have to go back and make up a little lost ground type of thing. And a lot of them, and even with older ladies and myself, it's just hard to comprehend that we're this age and our minds were always like in our high school teen years. I mean, we never really grow out of that.
No.
And so it is hard to accept. I mean, I get the folks every day saying, I can't believe I'm this old. I can't believe my body's failing on me. And I'm like, yes, but let's just do what we can to get it better. That's all we can do. We can't go back in time. We can't change. I have people say, God, I wish I'd trained with you, started 20 years ago. I'd be in so much better shape. If I would have started with you when I was 55, now that I'm 75, I'd be so much better. And I'm like, we can't do that. Let's just try to take you from where you are to where you would like to be safely now. I get so much of that. Oh, yeah, well, back in the day, I was, I could do all of this. I'm like, well, we can't do it now. And if you try, you're going to hurt yourself. And then you'll never be back in the gym again because you'll be in pain on the sofa. And then you're really not going to move,
And you're going
you
to be
know.
grumpy and grouchy on top of it, which is not going to make you get any friends anyway. So, Jeff, what's one bit of advice you'd give to somebody? Maybe they've just come out of surgery, they've been told they have to do exercise. So there's that resistance. Okay, I'm sore, I'm scared. You have to do exercise. What would you say to somebody like that who's in a recovery state? Because I know you work with people there as well, don't you?
I do. And there's, a couple of so that's like extrinsic motivation. You're told you have to. Your
Hmm.
doctor says you better lose weight and you better get stronger. Your diet, we're going to put you on diabetes medication or we're going to have to amputate your leg.
Yeah,
I mean, that's really is a thing. And
the
then there's
truth. Yeah.
intrinsic motivation where you do it because you want to. Obviously, the people that do it because they want to stick to it much more. The
Yeah.
other thing of extrinsic, maybe it's your spouse. Your spouse is prodding you, and I've had some of that, and they don't really want to be there, and they look for every excuse not to show up. Oh, I've got this thing. I can't come today. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sore. I can't really do anything.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a big part of it. People that are there because they need to, but they really don't want to. The best advice is start with something you can do and you're willing to do and then build on it. They say if you are just going to walk for 5 minutes, just go out the door and walk down three houses and turn around and walk back and come in and just do that. And maybe the next day, and just do that for a week. And then maybe, okay, I can go to the end of the block and I'll come back and do that. And then maybe, oh, I'll go around the block and maybe it'll help your mental attitude as well, where you're like going to do it. But when people see all of the things they should be doing. Oh, my diet, my exercise, all this, it's overwhelming and it's easier not to do anything. So it's like, let's just take one little thing that you think you can do and go with that and then make small incremental additions to not get overwhelmed because the biggest way to overwhelm somebody is like you completely have to revamp your diet. Everything in your
Sure.
refrigerator has to get thrown out. We have to buy all new stuff that you've never eaten before that you don't know how to cook. You don't know when you're going to eat it and how to eat it and all of that stuff. Then they don't do anything. So I have a certification called behavior change in exercise. You'll
Wow.
only change when the pain of where you are, your present circumstances, is greater than the fear or pain of change. You're like, I am so sick of being overweight and being unhealthy and sitting in this chair. I am ready to run through a brick wall to change my current condition. They are ready to change. If people are like, yeah, I don't like things they are, but boy, I don't like going to the gym and I'm afraid of what they're going to make me do, then they're not going to change. So the pain of where you are has to be greater than the fear of change or the pain of change.
Brilliant. That is such a great way to sort of round this up because that is where the buck stops, I think. At the end of the day, it is about us and what we want from our lives. And, we all have a choice. And whatever we choose will determine the result in the end. I don't think we need to say any more than that because ultimately the opportunities are out there. People like you who do what you do are there, available, ready to help. All the person has to do is take that first step, reach out and say, how do we
I,
do this?
Yep,
Yeah,
right. Exactly. And it's
yeah,
like, I'll take over from there.
yeah,
I've coached a lot of people through it. You just have to show up and be ready to do it. It's like, you don't have to know how anything. That's what I do. You just show up ready to do what it's going to take, and we'll figure out what's an appropriate pace
yeah,
and all of that and safely. And I always take feedback. It's like, I can't feel what you feel. If something hurts, if something doesn't feel right, let me know immediately. We'll modify. There's a million different maneuvers we can do to reach the same goal. If this street doesn't work, we'll go around the block and we'll come in and we'll get there. We'll get you stronger there. If this one way, there's not just one path to get anywhere. So we can always modify, to get you there safely and pain free. The no pain, no gain, I don't believe that at all. Usually, now, muscle burn, if we've done a few reps and it's okay, the muscle's getting fatigued and there's a burn in there, that's different than, oh, my elbow hurts or my
yeah.
shoulder hurts. So people need to know that difference, but that part of, oh, it really hurt, but I kept doing it. My back really hurt, but I kept doing it. And I'm like, no, don't believe.
Chances are it's because you were doing it the wrong way or your posture was wrong. And so you shouldn't have been in that pain. I can show you a pain you should be feeling.
Right,
Come
right. The
on over
muscle
here.
burn, but
Yeah.
not that type of pain.
Wow, Jeff, this time has just flown by. Thank you so much for stepping in. I think if anything, you will have inspired the listeners to really think about where they are right now. What is one thing with regards to their health and well-being, their body health? that perhaps is niggling. And I'm sure you and I would both say, don't let the niggle grow into a problem.
Exactly. I always tell people, even if they're in their 70s, we're not training for today. We're training for 10 years from now, 15 years from now.
Yeah.
If we don't do anything now, where are you going to be in 10 or 15 years? You're really going to be in trouble, you know. So
Yeah.
we're always kind of looking at where our future self is going to be. What are we going to do now to make our future better? Think of it that way, more of a long-term thing.
Yeah, and the bonus of being 60 or 70 when you're looking at 10 years ahead is that you've probably got 60 or 70 years behind you, and you kind of know a lot of stuff already about how this is usually unfolded. So, do you want it to be the same, or do you want something fresh, new, and wonderful? So, Jeff, thanks so much for being with us today on the Diary of a Muse podcast. I am certainly inspired, and I know that my activity is just about to go up.
Excellent, Tess. Thank you
Um,
so much for giving me the opportunity to spread the message of health
yes,
and wellness and fitness to folks out there. I've taken that on as a mission of mine, obviously.
yes.
So I really appreciate the opportunity.
Absolute gift. I cannot wait to share this conversation with a lot of people so that they too may ask themselves some interesting questions and maybe get just a little bit more active than they were yesterday. So, guys, thanks for tuning in today and listening to our episode with Jeff Whittle from Silverstrong Fitness. You will find all the details of how you can reach out to him in the sort of content section of the podcast. But really, at the end of the day, go out right now and do something active, whether it is a gentle stretch or an ankle swirl, not quite the words Jeff would have used. Just think about that beautiful body you have and how long do you want it to be working for you rather than against you. And I'll be back soon with something else to talk about. But for now, just look after that body, nurture it. And if you have any questions, I have no doubt Jeff would love to hear from you and he will happily guide you, direct you, or answer any concerns you might have about where
Just
you are
answer
right now.
questions.
Yeah.
Certainly.
So take care. Thanks very much. And we'll be back again soon. Bye for now.